Today we're going to talk about my pick for the most intense horror film of the 1980s, The Hitcher from 1986.
The terror starts the moment you stop for The Hitcher.
This brutal thriller about a hitchhiking serial killer was a box office bomb when it originally came out, but is an undeniable cult classic today. Well, yeah, I guess that's how it usually works with cult classics, right? Not successful when they came out, gains in appreciation later. Anyway, it was directed by Robert Harmon, one of his early movies, and he didn't go on to have a big career. He did direct a lot of those Jesse Stone movies with Tom Selleck. Maybe he directed all of them, actually. But for my interest, he directed Nowhere to Run with Jean-Claude Van Damme, one of my top favorite movies of his, and I think one of the most underrated action films of all time. It's starring C. Thomas Howell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Jeffrey DeMunn, and the incredible Rutger Hauer.
My mother told me never to do this.
He opened the doors of hell.
All right, so we kick off with our main character, Jim Halsey, driving at night, seemingly in real time. Geez, I think I'm gonna fall asleep during this. But wait, is he falling asleep? Whoa, okay, we're really starting this movie off with some anxiety, geez. This music that's playing is by composer Mark Isham. I love his score for this movie. It's like not the typical score for an 80s movie. It's not exactly Carpenter-like synth, but it's not like a traditional classic orchestra score either. It's something very interesting and very cool throughout the whole film. And only 4 minutes into the movie, our title character shows up. Yeah, you almost crash into a semi and then you want to bring someone else in the car to share the danger. Doesn't sound like a good idea, but okay.
I thought he'd help me stay awake.
He says his name is John Ryder, which is a nod to the Doors song Rider on the Storm that was the original inspiration for this movie, a song about a hitchhiking killer. Well, that just makes sense.
And I always loved the song and thought that it was a great opening for a film.
And of course, that's Rutger Hauer in the lead villain role, who actually got top billing in this movie, but several other actors were considered for it. The director wanted Terrence Stamp, Sam Elliott was going to do it at one point, and the writer's pick was actually Keith Richards. Yes, that Keith Richards. But I'm so glad it went to Rutger Hauer. He is like one of the greats of all time, one of the most underrated actors. I mean, probably most well known for Blade Runner, incredible in that film, or in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or maybe these days Batman Begins.
Did you get the memo?
But he's in a lot of really cool cult films as well, like Blind Fury, this action movie where he plays like a blind swordsman archetype, or Split Second, which is like this action, sci-fi, horror, alien ripoff hybrid. Highly recommend Split Second for a really weird movie night. You haven't seen anything like it. And in the actual lead role, that's C. Thomas Howell as Jim Halsey. I really like C. Thomas Howell, particularly because of Secret Admirer, which is one of the greatest, most underrated teen comedies of all time. I cannot recommend this movie enough. Or you can see him in Soul Man, a movie that I would play a clip from just as a joke, but I'm afraid of getting demonetized. But yeah, look up Soul Man if you dare. All right, so now he's got this hitchhiker in the car and he's weirdly staring at his lips. Wait, is the hitcher grabbing his leg now? What's going on? Jim gets a little freaked out and tries to kick this guy out of his car, but the hitcher refuses him in just the most badass way.
I'm gonna sit here. You're gonna drive.
Jim goes along with it, and after seeing a broken down car on the side of the road, the hitcher then admits that, yeah, he killed that guy, and he says it to him in the most insane way by saying,
Because I cut off his legs.
And then his arms. This moment is incredible to me because it is so much scarier than just like I killed him, but getting so grotesquely specific about it. I mean, for one thing, it's really setting our standards high for how great a villain this is going to be in this horror movie. But also in the context of the story, you could almost imagine Jim Halsey thinking, is this guy kidding? Because it's so over the top what he's saying, or is he just totally out of his mind and this didn't actually happen? Because it's just so dramatic. I just love the specificity of this moment. But no, he pretty quickly figures out, yes, this guy is a legitimate psychopath. He's got a knife at his throat. And it's the first moment in the film when the most important question is going to be asked. The question that's going to come up again and again.
What do you want?
What do you want? And he says, I want you to stop me. It's like he wants an adversary. He wants somebody that can stand up to him. And he gets it because when Jim notices the door is not fully closed, he kicks him out of the car. It is such an awesome moment.
Yeah! Yeah!
And it's so satisfying because just in this very brief screen time, Rutger Hauer has established himself as one of the most intimidating and scary villains ever. I mean, it's no doubt why C. Thomas Howell said that he was actually very intimidated and scared of Rutger Hauer all through the making of this film, despite the fact that by all reports, Rutger Hauer is a very nice guy. Right as Jim is thinking his worries are over, he then sees the Hitcher in another car in a station wagon with a family. And I'm just going to say right now, do not pick up hitchhikers if you have got a child in the car. I mean, they say it's a good idea not to pick up hitchhikers in general, and I would probably agree with that. Never done it myself. But if you got a kid in the car, that is really crazy. I mean, look, he's got his arm around the kid in the back. He's just some weirdo off the street, off the highway. That's even worse. Now Jim has decided he's going to save the lives of this family by telling them to pull over. I don't know what he thinks is going to happen once they do pull over. It's not like pulling over to the side of the road is going to suddenly incapacitate this psycho killer. He's not successful, and when he ends up finding the car on the side of the road, there's this amazing moment where he looks in. All we see is a little bit of blood dripping on his foot, and then he runs away and throws up. It's this brilliant piece of visual storytelling that doesn't show us what happened. Don't worry, the gore is coming in this movie. This movie's going to show you some things that happen, but here we're not going to see it, and just seeing that dramatic reaction, it's so unsettling. It's so effective. He then stops at a gas station to find a phone so he can report this, and oh my gosh, did this guy find another ride? Has any hitchhiker ever had this much luck? Well, male hitchhiker? Jim eventually makes it somewhere where there are actually some people that are still alive. He finds this diner, and while it's not open yet, he gets the worker to let him in, and it's Jennifer Jason Leigh. It is so good to see her in this movie. I am a big fan of Jennifer Jason Leigh. Made a splash in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but is in so many other great films too. And she's so great, she even makes him a cheeseburger. This part always makes me hungry. I mean, it looks so good, especially the fries. I mean, look at those things.
You know what I'd really like? A cheeseburger.
And it turns out in this moment that this is an alien movie too.
My brother Bill is from Mars. Actually, we're all from Mars around here. We keep our spaceship out back.
It's nice to see this place serves authentic finger food. Jim goes outside and meets the cops that he called, and they act totally rationally when they see the guy that called them. God, this movie is directed so viscerally. I mean, even just when the cops are hitting him against their car, you just feel every hit. It's the sound design, it's the editing. This movie is so well made. Now that the cops have taken him to the station and seem convinced that he is the killer, it's now time for the Hitcher to turn into a why doesn't anybody believe me movie. Falsely accused. A man falsely accused is a classic archetype, right? That's what we're getting here. And when he's given them different people to call so that they can verify who he is, because it turns out the hitchhiker pickpocketed him and he doesn't have his ID anymore. Nobody is picking up the phone, so it seems like this guy is cooked.
That kid isn't a killer. Any fool could say that.
Oh. Okay. Oh no, they're still putting him in jail anyway. Damn it. Well, you know, at least he's safe in there. But it turns out he's the only one that's safe. He figures out that now his door is unlocked and maybe everyone else is dead out there. So he starts sneaking through, and I really love this moment where he's sneaking, trying to figure out what's going on. It's very, very suspenseful. Now, I gotta say, I think the better option here would be to stay in the jail cell, lock it back, just sit there, because eventually somebody's going to show up and they're going to see you couldn't have done this because you've been locked in a jail cell. You're safe from the Hitcher unless he comes back and gets the keys or something like that. Or in case it takes weeks for anybody to show up because it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but maybe you can make a quick phone call and then go back in the cell. I don't know. He's in a really bad situation is what I'm saying. I'm just trying to help him out, just spitballing. Instead, he holds some other cops at gunpoint. This seems like a fantastic idea. And I just got to say, I'm really feeling in this moment that the Hitcher is just like destroyed his life. He is such a force. I mean, not only has he killed a lot of people, literally destroyed some lives, but for our main character, like now he's on the run from the law. He's holding cops at gunpoint, trying to survive, but also trying not to get thrown in prison for the rest of his life and blamed for all this. I didn't even mention that the Hitcher dropped the knife into his pocket. That's a big reason why people are suspecting him. This movie is like a nightmare I would have. People say like Italian horror films, like Argento films, like those are like nightmares because they're so trippy. My nightmares are not like those. My nightmares are like this. Now they're showing up at a motel. Roy's. How did he take enough time off being a paramedic to start a motel? Friday the 13th 5 fans? Anybody? All right, never mind. And who does he meet in this place but John Ryder, the Hitcher? And I gotta say, this moment at the table is so incredibly intense. I love C. Thomas Howell's performance in this moment.
The guy's empty.
Yeah? Yeah? So help me, I'll blow you in half.
Some might call it a little bit over the top, but he just feels so authentically mentally destroyed by this guy and this day he's had. Like, you're not often going to see an actor this terrified in a movie. He pulls it off so well. He's got a gun on him. He's threatening to kill him. And he asks, why are you doing this to me?
Why are you doing this to me?
And I think that is the driving question of this movie. We got a variation of that question a little bit earlier in the film, and here it's coming up again.
Smart kid. I'll figure it out.
And he's even seemingly begging Jim, squeeze the trigger, do it. And he ends up just unloading a round of, well, the gun's empty, a round of nothing at him. And there almost seems to be disappointment. And after this tender moment of putting pennies on his eyes, I don't really know what the significance of that is, he gives him something, and it turns out to be bullets. He gives him some bullets for his empty gun. Very interesting, very significant. And something else significant about that scene is it's yet another moment where the Hitcher easily could have killed him and doesn't do it. And that's more confirmation this is not about killing him. This is about mental torture. This is about a game. And potentially about something else. Jim then gets on a bus, and in a crazy coincidence, he happens to run into Nash again. That's Jennifer Jason Leigh's character. So good to see her back in this film. Well, she's probably not happy to be back in this. And the bus gets pulled over by some more cops who are, again, holding Jim at gunpoint because they believe he has killed all of these people that the Hitcher did, this 20-something kid, and especially their friends, the other two cops that the Hitcher just killed. And look, I understand these guys are probably not world-class detectives, but shouldn't they be able to tell that the bullets that killed those cops did not come from inside the car, which everyone knew Jim was inside the car because he was just talking to other cops on the radio? Like, come on, man. But they are so sure that he did it, despite glaring evidence to the contrary, that the guy's even trying to get Jim to look like he's going for his gun.
I said you spit on my wrist. Wipe it off.
This is a seriously not cool move, and Nash agrees because she is coming to his rescue. It's actually kind of cool that this movie really has two antagonists, the Hitcher and the Law, and both of them work together to make this a brutal, intense experience, mostly for Jim, but us, the audience, too. We then get an awesome car chase with this amazing stunt. I mean, look at this thing. I love what a genre blender this movie is. I would say it's most obviously a thriller in plot, but it's just that the violence is so horrific, so disturbing, and Rutger Hauer is so scary and like so convincing as not just being like a regular real world bad guy, but being like this monster, this supernatural force. Now, he's not supernatural, not confirmed to be in the movie at least, but Rutger Hauer's performance is just so scary. He feels like that. And I just love how little information we get about him. I mean, who is he? Is he a regular guy who just gets his kicks doing this? Is he some kind of demon or possessed? Like, we have no idea. But whatever it is, Rutger Hauer could make us believe it because he is so scary. So that makes it feel like a horror film. But then, yes, it does have its action elements like this amazing stunt or the fact that Rutger Hauer literally takes out a helicopter. This reminds me of when John McClane took out a helicopter in that fourth Die Hard movie.
She just killed a helicopter with a car.
Yeah, he went from saving Christmas to that ridiculous stuff. Now the two of them are going to get some rest. They get a hotel room, and while Jim's taking a shower, we get this panning shot away from Nash that reveals... Okay, that reveal of him standing in the corner is like maybe one of the scariest things I've ever seen in a movie. It is so violating, disturbing. Just him standing there, like he has become such a scary character in this movie that is the fact that that freaks me out. There's this really creepy moment where he lays on the bed next to Nash and she presumably thinks that it's Jim, so she's not freaking out about it. And if you listen to the director talk about this movie, there's this interesting story that comes up where Rutger Hauer, who had a reputation for being an actor who will throw out hundreds of ideas at a director, and Robert Harmon, director of this film, said that he genuinely liked that, and that was usually a good thing. But Rutger Hauer had this idea that he wanted to write some original poetry and deliver it to her while he lays on the bed next to her.
Feed her poetry. Poetry.
And Robert Harmon, I think, rightfully did not think that was a good idea, but was a new director, and Rutger Hauer was a big deal because of Blade Runner, and he was very famous for the fact that he wrote the Tears in the Rain speech in Blade Runner, so he's like a big deal, and he didn't have the heart to tell him no. So it gets to shooting day, and he's like so nervous, like, oh no, he's going to read this poetry. I'm going to have to keep it in the movie.
Poetry.
It's going to be so bad. I don't want to do this. And they shot it. Rutger Hauer delivered the poetry. And then he said, you know what? I don't think that really works. And Robert Harmon was like, you know what? I think you're right. I agree. And it didn't make it into the movie. So he shouldn't have worried. Rutger Hauer is not an idiot. He knows what he's doing. He throws out some ideas, but he knows when something doesn't work. Wait, why is Jim putting on his shoes in the bathroom? Well, that's kind of weird. But he then figures out that Nash is no longer in the room, and he goes out and finds there's a big scene going on out there because, oh my gosh. Okay, This is the most insane moment of the film. This is where the hitcher has tied half of Nash to a giant truck and half to its trailer hitch. And all he has to do is let go of the clutch. And there's a bunch of cops there, including Jeffrey DeMunn as the captain, probably one of the most dependable character actors. I always like seeing him pop up in a movie. They're all there, so they now know that Jim is not the killer. They know exactly who he is because he's right there. But they can't take this guy out because if they do, again, Jim then goes to talk him down, and now the hitcher is explicitly begging Jim to kill him.
Put it in my face. Right there. You know what to do.
And this is the answer to our question. What does he want? He wants to die. He wants to be taken out. And for whatever reason, he has picked Jim to do it. And this whole sickening mental torture game is all about building up an adversary and letting him be taken out by that adversary. A very interesting idea, very different for this kind of movie. I mean, this movie is so interesting, original. This is a incredibly intense and ultimately horrifying moment because it does not go well for Nash. And this is another moment that takes what probably would be just a thriller in most cases into the full-on terrifying horror stratosphere, because this is probably one of the most disturbing moments of the genre in this decade. Now the cops are able to take the hitcher in, and now our questions about who he is, they don't get answered, but they get answered in a sense that he doesn't have an official identity. So he's not some normal guy that gets his kicks this way. They have no idea who he is. They don't even know his name.
I know that we'll find something, but right now I don't even know his name.
Which I thought was weird because, I mean, Jim knows his name because he told him at the very beginning of the film, but I guess that's realistic because I often can't remember people's names either.
His name is John Ryder.
But he does remember John Ryder. That's cool. And now it seems that Jim's problems are over, but Jim is not convinced of that. And he ends up taking the captain's gun because there is something he's got to do.
Something I gotta do.
No, you don't know what you're doing.
He seems to be convinced that this is some kind of supernatural force, and not even the entire police department. Nobody can hold him. So now we're kind of calling into question, is Jim crazy? Has he lost his mind through all this? Because this seems like a really bad move. But when we come back over to the hitcher, he's right. They can't hold him. He does break out. And when Jim shows up to confront him, I love this moment when the hitcher jumps off of the truck because the sound designer literally put in a monster roar when he jumps. It sounds like a lion roar. Like, that's a crazy move, but it again drives home the fact that this is not a normal villain like in a thriller. This is something otherworldly. I'm not making some bold claims that The Hitcher is a supernatural horror film, but there is something going on here. That is all I'm saying. My God, this is so well shot. This movie looks amazing. I mean, look at this moment. The depth in the shot, him with the shotgun. I'm just nerding out about how cool this looks. The good old dependable horror trope of the car not starting. Always nice to see ya. But it does start, and after running the dude over, he pops up like Michael Myers. Again, I'm saying there's something else going on with this guy. And Jim finally takes him out, and we get this quiet and melancholic go to credits while we just watch Jim stand there. It's such a, the movie does end with a bang. I'm not saying it doesn't, but then we just get this little quiet go to credits, and it's It's unsettling. So let's rate The Hitcher. Now for atmosphere, I'm actually going to give this a 9. And I know a lot of times when I'm rating things like this, we're talking about gothic horror movies here on this channel, but this film turns middle America from wherever exactly this takes place, kind of looks like the desert. It's between Chicago and San Diego. But the movie like turns it into some kind of post-apocalyptic wasteland. It is so quiet, dusty, eerie. This is a great daylight horror movie. It's a great morning horror movie because a lot of it takes place in the early morning, and everything feels so sinister, foreboding. The dust almost acts like fog in a gothic horror film. It looks fantastic. Immaculately shot by John Seale, who did also shoot Mad Max Fury Road, probably one of the greatest looking modern films, and a post-apocalyptic desert movie. For characters, I'm going to give this a 9. Now, the villain character of John Ryder is one of the greatest horror villains of all time. I genuinely believe that. I mean, he's great on the page because he's very interesting. He's got some great lines, but it's Rutger Hauer's performance, man. One of the scariest, most sinister horror performances of all time. I would say this is my favorite performance from him. Blade Runner is, of course, second, but I would even put this over Blade Runner. He is spectacular in this movie. But then I really like Jim. I really like Nash. Maybe I just can't give it a 10 because there's just not enough characters. And, I'm not going to say like Jim and Nash are two of the greatest characters I've ever seen or anything, but for what they're supposed to be, they're perfect, and the villain is incredible. For story, I'm going to give this a 10. I think this is a simple but effective story that is perfectly well told. There's a lot of visual storytelling in it, particularly when Jim is alone, that is so well done. I mean, if you could just watch this movie without looking at your phone or taking notes for a video like, I was doing, but if you're really just watching this movie, I mean, it tells you so much with like each and every shot. I think the story is great. I love it. I have no complaints about it. And then for scares, I'm also going to give this a 10. Rutger Hauer's performance, the gore. This is a really violent movie in a very disturbing way, particularly from seeing the aftermath of what he does. The truck moment, which is so horrific. I could even imagine there are probably some people who liked this movie up until that point and then couldn't quite handle it anymore. Like, I haven't heard from anybody like that, but I just guarantee you they're out there because that moment is so devastating. And then it is such an intense film. It is the most intense horror film of the 1980s. I'm going to go ahead and stand by that. Overall, I'm going to give this movie a 9. I think it is incredible. It is one of the best horror films of its decade. So that's my review, but what are your thoughts on this movie? Please let me know down in the comments below. I really enjoyed talking about this. Thank you so much if you watched until the end. I know this is something a little bit different for my channel. If you did enjoy this and it's your first time, hit the like button and the subscribe button. I would truly appreciate it. With all that said, don't forget to take some time to enjoy yourself today. Have some fun. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.